Within the town hall all was bustle and turmoil. At one side behind a low table covered with green baize sat two scriveners with great rolls of paper in front of them. A long line of citizens passed slowly before them, each in turn putting down a roll or bag of coins which was duly noted by the receivers. A square iron-bound chest stood by their side, into which the money was thrown, and we noted as we passed that it was half full of gold pieces. We could not but mark that many of the givers were men whose threadbare doublets and pinched faces showed that the wealth which they were dashing down so readily must have been hoarded up for such a purpose, at the cost of scanty fare and hard living. Most of them accompanied their gift by a few words of prayer, or by some pithy text anent the treasure which rusteth not, or the lending to the Lord. The town clerk stood by the table giving forth the vouchers for each sum, and the constant clack of his tongue filled the hall, as he read aloud the names and amounts, with his own remarks between. Abraham Willis, he shouted as we entered, put him down £26 and 10 shillings. You shall receive 10 per centum upon this earth, Master Willis, and I warrant that it shall not be forgotten hereafter. John Standish, £2. William Simons, 2 guineas. Standfast Healing, £45. That is a rare blow which you have struck into the ribs of prelacy, good Master Healing. Solomon Warren, 5 guineas. James White, 5 shillings, the widow's mite, James. Thomas Bakewell, £10. Nay, Master Bakewell, surely out of 3 farms on the banks of Tone, and grazing land in the fattest part of Athelney, you can spare more than this for the good cause. We shall doubtless see you again. Alderman Smithson, £90. Aha! There is a slap for the Scarlet Woman. A few more such and her throne shall be a ducking stool. We shall break her down, worthy Master Smithson, even as Jehu, the son of Nimshi, broke down the house of Baal. So he babbled on with praise, precept, and rebuke, though the grave and solemn burghers took little notice of his empty clamor. At the other side of the hall were several long wooden drinking troughs, which were used for the storing of pikes and scythes. Special messengers and tithing men had been sent out to scour the country for arms, who, as they returned, placed their prizes here under the care of the armorer general. Besides the common weapons of the peasants, there was a puncheon half full of pistols and petronels, together with a good number of muskets, screw-guns, snaifences, birding-pieces, and carbines, with a dozen bell-mouthed brass blunderbusses, and a few old-fashioned wall-pieces, such as sakers and culverins taken from the manor-houses of the county. From the walls and the lumber-rooms of these old dwellings many other arms had been brought to light which were doubtless esteemed as things of price by our forefathers, but which would seem strange to your eyes in these days, when a musket may be fired once in every 2 minutes, and will carry a ball to a distance of 400 paces. There were halberds, battle-axes, morning stars, brown bills, maces, and ancient coats of chain-mail, which might even now save a man from sword-stroke or pike-thrust. In the midst of the coming and the going stood Master Timewell, the mayor, ordering all things like a skillful and provident commander. I could understand the trust and love which his townsmen had for him, as I watched him laboring with all the wisdom of an old man and the blithesomeness of a young one. He was hard at work as we approached in trying the lock of a falconet, but perceiving us, he came forward and saluted us with much kindliness. I have heard much of ye, said he, how ye caused the faithful to gather to a head, and so beat off the horsemen of the usurper. It will not be the last time, I trust, that ye shall see their backs. I hear, Colonel Saxon, that ye have seen much service abroad. I have been the humble tool of Providence in much good work, said Saxon, with a bow. I have fought with the Swedes against the Brandenburgers, and again with the Brandenburgers against the Swedes, my time and conditions with the latter having been duly carried out. I have afterwards in the Bavarian service fought against Swedes and Brandenburgers combined, besides having undergone the great wars on the Danube against the Turk, and 2 campaigns with the Messers in the Palatinate, which latter might be better termed holiday-making than fighting. A soldierly record in very truth, cried the mayor, stroking his white beard. I hear that you are also powerfully borne onwards in prayer and song. You are, I perceive, one of the old breed of 44, Colonel, the men who were in the saddle all day, and on their knees half the night. When shall we see the like of them again? A few such broken wrecks as I are left, with the fire of our youth all burned out and not left but the ashes of lethargy and lukewarmness. Nay, nay, said Saxon, your position and present business will scarce jump with the modesty of your words. But here are young men who will find the fire if their elders bring the brains. This is Captain Micah Clarke, and Captain Lockerby, and Captain the Honourable Sir Gervas Jerome, who have all come far to draw their swords for the downtrodden faith. Taunton welcomes ye, young sirs, said the mayor, looking a trifle askance, as I thought, at the baronet, who had drawn out his pocket mirror, and was engaged in the brushing of his eyebrows. I trust that during your stay in this town you will all four take up your abode with me. 'Tis a homely roof and simple fare, but a soldier's wants are few. And now, Colonel, I would fain have your advice as to these 3 drakes, whether if rehooked they may be deemed fit for service, and also as to these demi-cannons, which were used in the old parliamentary days, and may yet have a word to say in the people's cause. The old soldier and the Puritan instantly plunged into a deep and learned disquisition upon the merits of wall-pieces, drakes, demi-culverins, sakers, minions, mortar-pieces, falcons, and patereros, concerning all which pieces of ordnance Saxon had strong opinions to offer, fortified by many personal hazards and experiences. He then dwelt upon the merits of fire-arrows and fire-pikes in the attack or defense of places of strength, and had finally begun to descant upon sconces, directus lateribus, and upon works, semilunar, rectilineal, horizontal, or orbicular, with so many references to His Imperial Majesty's lines at Gran, that it seemed that his discourse would never find an end. We slipped away at last, leaving him still discussing the effects produced by the Austrian grenados upon a Bavarian brigade of pikes at the Battle of Obergrostock. Curse me if I like accepting this old fellow's offer, said Sir Gervas, in an undertone. I have heard of these Puritan households. Much grace to little sack, and texts flying about as hard and as jagged as flint stones. To bed at sundown, and a sermon ready if ye do but look kindly at the waiting wench or hum the refrain of a ditty. His home may be larger, but it could scarce be stricter than that of my own father, I remarked. I'll warrant that, cried Reuben. When we have been a morris dancing, or having a Saturday night game of kiss in the ring, or parson has lost his coat, I have seen Ironside Joe stride past us, and cast a glance at us which hath frozen the smile upon our lips. I warrant that he would have aided Colonel Pride to shoot the bears and hack down the maypoles. 'Twere fratricide for such a man to shoot a bear, quoth Sir Gervas, with all respect, friend Clarke, for your honoured progenitor. No more than for you to shoot at a popinjay, I answered, laughing, but as to the mayor's offer, we can but go to meet with him now, and should it prove irksome it will be easy for you to plead some excuse, and so get honourably quit of it. But bear in mind, Sir Gervas, that such households are in very truth different to any with which you are acquainted, so curb your tongue or offence may come of it. Should I cry hem, or cough, it will be a sign to you that you had best beware. Agreed, young Solomon, cried he. It is, indeed, well to have a pilot like yourself who knows these godly waters. For my own part, I should never know how near I was to the shoals. But our friends have finished the battle of Ober-what's-its-name, and are coming towards us. I trust, worthy Mr. Mayor, that your difficulties have been resolved? They are, sir, replied the Puritan. I have been much edified by your colonel's discourse, and I have little doubt that by serving under him ye will profit much by his ripe experience. Very like, sir, very like, said Sir Gervas carelessly. But it is nigh 1 o'clock, the mayor continued, our frail flesh cries aloud for meat and drink. I beg that ye will do me the favour to accompany me to my humble dwelling, where we shall find the household board already dressed. With these words he led the way out of the hall and paced slowly down Fore Street, the people falling back to right and to left as he passed, and raising their caps to do him reverence. Here and there, as he pointed out to us, arrangements had been made for barring the road with strong chains to prevent any sudden rush of cavalry. In places, too, at the corner of a house, a hole had been knocked in the masonry through which peeped the dark muzzle of a carronade or wall-piece. These precautions were the more necessary as several bodies of the royal horse, besides the one which we had repulsed, were known to be within the Deane, and the town, deprived of its ramparts, was open to an incursion from any daring commander. The chief magistrate's house was a squat square-faced stone building within a court which opened onto East Street. The peaked oak door, spangled with broad iron nails, had a gloomy and surly aspect, but the hall within was lightful and airy, with a bright polished cedar planking, and high panelling of some dark-grained wood which gave forth a pleasant smell as of violets. A broad night of steps rose up from the farther end of the hall, down which as we entered a young sweet-faced maid came tripping, with an old dame behind her, who bore in her hands a pile of fresh napery. At the sight of us the elder one retreated up the stairs again, whilst the younger came flying down 3 steps at a time, threw her arms round the old mayor's neck, and kissed him fondly, looking hard into his face the while, as a mother gazes into that of a child with whom she fears that aught may have gone amiss. "Weary again, Daddy, weary again," she said, shaking her head anxiously, with a small white hand upon each of his shoulders. "Indeed, and indeed, thy spirit is greater than thy strength." "Nay, nay, lass," said he, passing his hand fondly over her rich brown hair. "The workman must toil until the hour of rest is rung. This, gentlemen, is my granddaughter Ruth, the sole relic of my family and the light of mine old age. The whole grove hath been cut down, and only the oldest oak and the youngest sapling left. These cavaliers, little one, have come from afar to serve the cause, and they have done us the honor to accept of our poor hospitality." "Ye are come in good time, gentlemen," she answered, looking us straight in the eyes with a kindly smile as a sister might greet her brothers. "The household is gathered round the table and the meal is ready." "But not more ready than we," cried the stout old burgher. "Do thou conduct our guests to their places, whilst I seek my room and doff these robes of office, with my chain and tippet, ere I break my fast." Following our fair guide we passed into a very large and lofty room, the walls of which were wainscoted with carved oak, and hung at either end with tapestry. The floor was tessellated after the French fashion, and plentifully strewn with skins and rugs. At one end of the apartment stood a great white marble fireplace, like a small room in itself, fitted up, as was the ancient custom, with an iron stand in the center, and with broad stone benches in the recess on either side. Lines of hooks above the chimney-piece had been used, as I surmise, to support arms, for the wealthy merchants of England were wont to keep enough in their houses to at least equip their apprentices and craftsmen. They had now, however, been removed, nor was there any token of the troublous times save a single heap of pikes and halberds piled together in a corner. Down the center of this room there ran a long and massive table, which was surrounded by 30 or 40 people, the greater part of whom were men. They were on their feet as we entered, and a grave-faced man at the farther end was drawling forth an interminable grace, which began as a thanksgiving for food, but wandered away into questions of church and state, and finally ended in a supplication for Israel now in arms to do battle for the Lord. While this was proceeding we stood in a group by the door with our caps doffed, and spent our time in observing the company more closely than we could have done with courtesy had their eyes not been cast down and their thoughts elsewhere. They were of all ages, from greybeards down to lads scarce out of their teens, all with the same solemn and austere expression of countenance, and clad in the same homely and somber garb. Save their wide white collars and cuffs, not a string of any color lessened the sad severity of their attire. Their black coats and doublets were cut straight and close, and their cordovan leather shoes, which in the days of our youth were usually the seat of some little ornament, were uniformly square-toed and tied with sad-colored ribbon. Most of them wore plain sword belts of untanned hide, but the weapons themselves, with their broad felt hats and black cloaks, were laid under the benches or placed upon the settles which lined the walls. They stood with their hands clasped and their heads bent, listening to the untimely address, and occasionally by some groan or exclamation testifying that the preacher's words had moved them. The overgrown grace came at last to an end, when the company sat silently down, and proceeded without pause or ceremony to attack the great joints which smoked before them. Our young hostess led us to the end of the table, where a high-carded chair with a black cushion upon it marked the position of the master of the house. Mistress Timewell seated herself upon the right of the mayor's place, with Sir Gervas beside her, while the post of honor upon the left was assigned to Saxon. On my left sat Lockerby, whose eyes I observed had been fixed in undisguised and all-absorbing admiration upon the Puritan maiden from the first moment that he had seen her. The table was of no great breadth, so that we could talk across in spite of the clatter of plates and dishes, the bustle of servants, and the deep murmur of voices. "This is my father's household," said our hostess, addressing herself to Saxon. "There is not one of them who is not in his employ. He hath many apprentices in the wool trade. We sit down 40 to meat every day in the year. And to right good fare, too," quoth Saxon, glancing down the table. "Salmon, ribs of beef, loin of mutton, veal, pasties, what could man wish for more? Plenty of good home brewed, too, to wash it down. If worthy Master Timewell can arrange that the army be victualled after the same fashion, I for one shall be beholden to him. A cup of dirty water and a charred morsel cooked on a ramrod over the campfire are like to take the place of these toothsome dainties." "Is it not best to have faith?" said the Puritan maiden. "Shall not the Almighty feed his soldiers even as Elisha was fed in the wilderness and Hagar in the desert?" "Aye," exclaimed a lanky-haired, swarthy young man who sat upon the right of Sir Gervas, "he will provide for us, even as the stream of water gushed forth out of dry places, even as the quails and the manna lay thick upon barren soil." "So I trust, young sir," quoth Saxon, "but we must none the less arrange a victual train, with a staff of wains, duly numbered, and an intendant over each, after the German fashion. Such things should not be left to chance." Pretty Mistress Timewell glanced up with a half-startled look at this remark, as though shocked at the want of faith implied in it. Her thoughts might have taken the form of words had not her father entered the room at the moment, the whole company rising and bowing to him as he advanced to his seat. "Be seated, friends," said he, with a wave of his hand. "We are a homely folk, Colonel Saxon, and the old-time virtue of respect for our elders has not entirely forsaken us. I trust, Ruth," he continued, "that thou hast seen to the wants of our guests." We all protested that we had never received such attention and hospitality. "'Tis well, 'tis well," said the good wool-worker. "But your plates are clear and your glasses empty. William, look to it. A good workman is ever a good trencherman. If a prentice of mine cannot clean his platter, I know that I shall get little from him with Carter and Teazle. Thew and sinew need building up. A slice from that round of beef, William. Touching that same battle of Obergrostock, Colonel, what part was played in the fray by that regiment of Pandar horse, in which, as I understand, thou didst hold a commission?" This was a question on which, as may be imagined, Saxon had much to say, and the pair were soon involved in a heated discussion, in which the experiences of Roundway Down and Marston Moor were balanced against the results of a score of unpronounceable fights in the Styrian Alps and along the Danube. Stephen Timewell in his lusty youth had led first a troop and then a regiment through the wars of the Parliament, from Chalgrove Field to the final battle at Worcester, so that his warlike passages, though less varied and extensive than those of our companion, were enough to enable him to form and hold strong opinions. These were in the main the same as those of the soldier of fortune, but when their ideas differed upon any point, there arose forthwith such a crossfire of military jargon, such speech of estacados and palisados, such comparisons of light horse and heavy, of pikemen and musketeers, of lanzknecht, leaguers, and onfalls, that the unused ear became bewildered with the babble. At last, on some question of fortification, the mayor drew his outworks with the spoons and knives, on which Saxon opened his parallels with lines of bread, and pushing them rapidly up with traverses and covered ways, he established himself upon the re-entering angle of the mayor's redoubt. This opened up a fresh question as to countermines, with the result that the dispute raged with renewed vigor. Whilst this friendly strife was proceeding between the elders, Sir Gervas Jerome and Mistress Ruth had fallen into conversation at the other side of the table. I have seldom seen, my dear children, so beautiful a face as that of this Puritan damsel, and it was beautiful with that sort of modest and maidenly comeliness where the features derive their sweetness from the sweet soul which shines through them. The perfectly molded body appeared to be but the outer expression of the perfect spirit within. Her dark brown hair swept back from a broad and white forehead, which surmounted a pair of well-marked eyebrows and large blue thoughtful eyes. The whole cast of her features was gentle and dove-like, yet there was a firmness in the mouth and delicate prominence of the chin which might indicate that in times of trouble and danger the little maid would prove to be no unworthy descendant of the Roundhead soldier and Puritan magistrate. I doubt not that where more loud-tongued and assertive dames might be cowed, the mayor's soft-voiced daughter would begin to cast off her gentler disposition, and to show the stronger nature which underlay it. It amused me much to listen to the efforts which Sir Gervas made to converse with her, for the damsel and he lived so entirely in two different worlds, that it took all his gallantry and ready wit to keep on ground which would be intelligible to her. "No doubt you spend much of your time in reading, Mistress Ruth," he remarked. "It puzzles me to think what else you can do so far from town." "Town," said she in surprise. "What is Taunton but a town?" "Heaven forbid that I should deny it," replied Sir Gervas, "more especially in the presence of so many worthy burghers, who have the name of being somewhat jealous of the honor of their native city. Yet the fact remains, fair mistress, that the town of London so far transcends all other towns that it is called, even as I called it just now, the town." "Is it so very large, then?" she cried, with pretty wonder. "But new louses are building in Taunton, outside the old walls, and beyond Shuttern, and some even at the other side of the river. Perhaps in time it may be as large." "If all the folks in Taunton were to be added to London," said Sir Gervas, "no one there would observe that there had been any increase." "Nay, there you are laughing at me." "That is against all reason," cried the country maiden. "Your grandfather will bear out my words," said Sir Gervas. "But to return to your reading, I'll warrant that there is not a page of Scudery and her Grand Cyrus which you have not read. You are familiar, doubtless, with every sentiment in Cowley, or Waller, or Dryden." "Who are these?" she asked. "At what church do they preach?" "Faith," cried the baronet, with a laugh, "honest John preaches at the church of Woolonwan, commonly known as Will's, where many a time it is 2 in the morning before he comes to the end of his sermon." "But why this question? Do you think that no one may put pen to paper unless they have also a right to wear a gown and climb up to a pulpit? I had thought that all of your sex had read Dryden. Pray, what are your own favorite books?" "There is Allian's Alarm to the Unconverted," said she. "It is a stirring work, and one which hath wrought much good. Hast thou not found it to fructify within thee?" "I have not read the book you name," Sir Gervas confessed. "Not read it," she cried, with raised eyebrows. "Truly I had thought that every one had read the Alarm. What dost thou think, then, of Faithful Contendings?" "I have not read it." "Or of Baxter's Sermons?" she asked. "I have not read them." "Of Bull's Spirit Cordial, then?" "I have not read it." Mistress Ruth Timewell stared at him in undisguised wonder. "You may think me ill-bred to say it, sir," she remarked, "but I cannot but marvel where you have been, or what you have done all your life. Why, the very children in the street have read these books." "In truth, such works come little in our way in London," Sir Gervas answered. "A play of George Etheridge's, or a jingle of Sir John Suckling's is lighter, though mayhap less wholesome food for the mind. A man in London may keep pace with the world of letters without much reading, for what with the gossip of the coffee-houses and the newsletters that fall in his way, and the babble of poets or wits at the assemblies, with mayhap an evening or 2 in the week at the playhouse, with Vanbrugh or Farquhar, one can never part company for long with the muses. Then, after the play, if a man is in no humor for a turn of luck at the green table at the Groom Porter's, he may stroll down to the coca tree if he be a Tory, or to St. James's if he be a Whig, and it is 10 to 1 if the talk turn not upon the turning of alcaics, or the contest between blank verse or rhyme. Then one may, after an arriere supper, drop into Will's or Slaughter's and find old John, with Tickle and Congreve and the rest of them, hard at work on the dramatic unities, or poetical justice, or some such matter. I confess that my own tastes lay little in that line, for about that hour I was likely to be worse employed with wine-flask, dice-box, or ham. Ham, cried I warningly, for several of the Puritans were listening with faces which expressed anything but approval. What you say of London is of much interest to me, said the Puritan maiden, though these names and places have little meaning to my ignorant ears. You did speak, however, of the playhouse. Surely no worthy man goes near those sinks of iniquity, the baited traps of the evil one? Has not the good and sanctified Master Bull declared from the pulpit that they are the gathering place of the froward, the chosen haunts of the perverse Assyrians, as dangerous to the soul as any of those papal steeplehouses wherein the creature is sacrilegiously confounded with the Creator? Well and truly spoken, Mistress Timewell, cried the lean young Puritan upon the right, who had been an attentive listener to the whole conversation. There is more evil in such houses than even in the cities of the plain. I doubt not that the wrath of the Lord will descend upon them, and destroy them, and wreck them utterly, together with the dissolute men and abandoned women who frequent them. Your strong opinions, friend, said Sir Gervas quietly, are borne out doubtless by your full knowledge of the subject. How often, prithee, have you been in these playhouses which you are so ready to decry? I thank the Lord that I have never been so far tempted from the straight path as to set foot within one, the Puritan answered, nor have I ever been in that great sewer which is called London. I trust, however, that I with others of the faithful may find our way thither with our tucks at our sides ere this business is finished, when we shall not be content, I'll warrant, with shutting these homes of vice, as Cromwell did, but we shall not leave one stone upon another, and shall sow the spot with salt, that it may be a hissing and a byword amongst the people. You are right, John Derrick, said the mayor, who had overheard the latter part of his remarks. Yet methinks that a lower tone and a more backward manner would become you better when you are speaking with your master's guests. Touching these same playhouses, Colonel, when we have carried the upper hand this time, we shall not allow the old tares to check the new wheat. We know what fruit these places have borne in the days of Charles, the Gwynns, the Palmers, and the whole base crew of foul lecherous parasites. Have you ever been in London, Captain Clarke? Nay, sir, I am country born and bred.